Ken Fipps is a public school teacher and a Johns Island native who's concerned about the future of education, quality of life, and infrastructure in South Carolina House District 119, which covers parts of Johns Island, West Ashley, and James Island. He wants to be the next state representative for that district, and he tells me why exclusively for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Ken Fipps, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. You know, me and you bumped into each other this past summer at the Sam Rittenberg Harris Teacher.
we did. That is where we bumped into each other. It just happened, and luckily, I'll kind of stand up. I wear this shirt very often, so everybody knows who I am. It's nice free advertisement. So yes, that's I think how you caught me in the crowd. You said, "Wait a minute, that's that Ken guy." So
yeah, and I said, "I need to interview you," and here we are.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate it greatly because I was actually on Savannah Highway earlier today, and I, didn't notice until I did my research. But you are a public school teacher, and you're also a native of Johns Island. And I know also from my research that you ran for the State House back in 2013. Let me ask you this, and because obviously you're back now, why the State House? Why Ken Fipps? Why again?
So I always joke. So I ran as an idealistic young kid right out of college. I graduated college in 2013 and then ran in that 2014 election is when I ran for State House. Which I'm glad I did. I met a lot of people doing that. It really helped shape a lot of my future, to be honest with you. So why am I running for State House? Why State House, and why am I running now? For the past 5 years, so this is year 6 in education, I've been a public school teacher in West Ashley. So obviously I've always been interested in politics. So that's always kind of been there. I've been involved in the Republican Party. I'm a former vice chair of the Republican Party. But after that first run, it was like, okay, well, that was fun. Let's, get a real job now. Let's kind of keep on going. It's time to build a life. The reason I'm back now, you want to say it that way, the reason I'm running this time is because of many different things. Obviously, education's a big part of it. I'm a public school teacher, and being a public school teacher, obviously there's been all kind of stuff. When it comes to State House, why State House? The State House is who really makes a lot of the determinations of what's going to go on in our public school system. A lot of people don't realize how much power they have over the public school system here in South Carolina. And there's a lot of good ideas. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of good ideas, and there's a lot of good people who mean well in the State House. But when you haven't been in the classroom, when you haven't actually experienced what it's like to be a teacher, you might think that you have a really good idea, but whenever it comes to practice, it doesn't work as well. And I'll give you an example. Recently, the bill to pass unencumbered planning time for elementary school teachers, that is an excellent thing that we need. That's obviously something that we need for our elementary school teachers. I was a middle school teacher. Now I'm teaching at the high school level, but unencumbered planning time is important because there's a lot of stuff that we have to do besides just teach our students. That being said, when you just say, okay, well, you have to give this to teachers. Well, you can't just leave the kids in the classroom by themselves and hope that it all goes well. You have to make sure that there is the money there, that you can hire extra people. How is this actually going to be facilitated? There's a lot of things that the ideas can be good, but the practicality stuff, you need a teacher to be able to say, hey, great idea. Why don't we do it this way? So that's one of the main reasons I'm running, is because we need a public school teacher who has experience in the State House saying, hey, here's what we actually need to do. We need to do this. We need to, and I'll tell you one of the things we need to do. We need to take a lot of off teachers' plates. Everybody always talks about teacher pay and, we'll keep teachers if we pay them more. That's part of it. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of it is all the extra stuff that we have to do as teachers, all the check marks that really, when it comes down to it, doesn't affect our student outcomes, that we're still required to do. We need to allow teachers to teach instead of making them do 100 other things that keeps them from teaching. So that was a big thing. And then the other thing is I am a Johns Island native now. I'm here at my house in West Ashley right now. So I live in West Ashley. And part of that's because being a public school teacher, I couldn't afford a house on Johns Island whenever I went to, to buy houses. So I'm in West Ashley, and I love my community here in West Ashley. But obviously, I'm a Johns Island native, born and raised. And currently, there's nobody that really represents Johns Island. Now, obviously, they have representatives,
Right.
but when it comes down to it, there's 3 state house districts on Johns Island currently with the redistricting.
Right.
And of those 3 state house districts, one of the representatives lives in Hollywood Ravenel area, one lives on James Island, and one lives in West Ashley, and none of them have the connections to Johns Island. When it comes to county council, there's 2 county council people who represent Johns Island. Now, there's just one is very small representation of Johns Island, but they both live on James Island.
Sure.
So it's one of those things of Johns Island has grown. It has a lot of people. It needs a voice, but there's nobody that has any connection to the island that understands what it's like to live on the island that is currently in government and able to advocate for Johns Island. Like I said, I was born and raised there. My family's owned a business on Johns Island since the 1950s. So our roots go deep on Johns Island. So, I might be in West Ashley, but I'm a Johns Island boy at heart.
And I want to start right there, and I failed to mention this to the viewers as well, but obviously you'll be representing House District 119 if you were to be elected, and that covers part of Johns Island, of course, and West Ashley and parts of James Island, I believe. But let me go, obviously, to the big talk that has been going on for at least 20 years, because I was born and raised here as well, but that is 526. The cost of the 526 extension over Johns Island is now projected at $2.3 billion. The Department of Transportation Secretary, Christy Hall, says the previous estimate for the extension is outdated, and a lot of things contribute to the new price tag for the project. Let me ask you this, Mr. Kent. What are the current market conditions for this particular project when it comes to construction?
So, a lot of this is, and I have to, before I answer that, I have to laugh with you because, I'll tell people I'm 31 years old. So I'm not, I like to think I'm still young. My students like to tell me otherwise, obviously. But that being said, I joke around that literally my entire life I've been hearing 526. And actually, even more funny than that is I was talking with Thomas Legree today, and obviously, and you can't mention 526 and not bring up Thomas Legree. And I was talking to him, and we differ on that. Obviously, I've always been a fan of 526. My problem with 526 is this: I'm a Republican. All right, so 526 is needed. Something like 526 is needed. But when it comes down to it, I also say 2 odd million. And let's be honest, when you get to 2 some odd billion dollars, when you get to that kind of numbers, it's just that's as a conservative, as a fiscal conservative, I say, wait a minute, that's a lot of money for this. Part of it is the litigation that it was held up in that has caused it to take a long time to be able to happen. Literally my whole life I've been hearing about 526 and it's been planned, and that being a local, that 526 is that, the thing that you always hear about that's never happened. But we can look at building costs right now. They've gone up. Everything's gone up in price. Obviously inflation's part of this, but all of it really comes back to it was planned out and it wasn't this much, but if we put it off for another 10 years, I'll go ahead and tell you the price is going to raise again. It's going to continue to raise because if we keep on putting it off. In theory, I support 526, but my thing is we have to do something about traffic on Johns Island. We have to do something about traffic on Johns Island, and we have to have another way on and off of Johns Island. Currently, there's 2 ways on and off of Johns Island. You have, and I'm going to use the colloquial names here, being a local, you have the Limehouse Bridge and you got the Stono Bridge. And I know those aren't the proper governmental names, but you got the Limehouse and the Stono. When you have a wreck on either one of those bridges, go ahead and expect a couple hours added onto your commute to try to get home. Now, what happens if there's a wreck on both bridges? What if you have a medical emergency on both bridges? My nephew lives on the backside of Johns Island. He has epilepsy. If he has a seizure and it has to be taken by ambulance to MUSC, if there's a wreck on the Stono Bridge that's blocking the Stono Bridge, that can be a life or death situation. So my thing is the 2 odd billion price tag is a lot. And as a physical conservative, I say, okay, we got to figure something out about this and how to do this. But we also have to get another way on and off of Johns Island. So I'm pro 526, but if we don't have the money, we still have to do something. So I'm pro 526, but also pro getting something done before I'm 80 years old. Because that's what at this state, that's what we're looking at.
And when you look at your data, Mr. Fipps, what are the current market conditions for this particular construction, 526 extension?
I'll be honest with you, I have not looked at the data for the construction. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I've looked at the data for it and looked at it. I know the price tag because when it comes down to it, that's not my expertise. I'm not I'm not a market analyst. I'm not a construction worker. I'm not a construction planner or an architect for that. So I know a lot of it goes into the price. A lot of stuff, like I said earlier, a lot of stuff has gone up with inflation and COVID. Right. A lot of building price have gone up. Another big part of this, the reason it is so expensive is because the planned route takes it over a lot of wetlands. You have to do a lot of environmental stuff goes into this as well. So that's going to be another big reason that this stretch of land, which isn't that long of a highway when it comes down to it, the plan, it's not like this is, 100-mile highway. It's not that long, but what it is, the reason it's so expensive is because of the bodies of water. You're going to cross you're going to cross the body of water twice. So we figure this is the cost of 2 large bridges, plus you're going to have the actual road parts of it that still will be around marsh areas where you're going to have those raised. It's not just a road, really, when it comes down to it. You're putting this up onto raised platform, and that's why it's going to be so expensive. It's because of everything that goes into it. But the actual market data, I'm not going to try to come up with stuff on that because I'm smart enough to realize that I'm not smart enough to know everything. So there's people who know that better than me that can explain that better to me.
But a lot of people are buying houses right now on Johns Island. What are the real estate costs for the alignment of this particular project?
So the real estate, what do you mean by that question?
Real estate costs for this alignment of this particular project. What do you see as far as real estate costs for this particular project?
So this project, if you're talking about 526 and the real estate costs, the houses are going in. So the problem that you have right now is the houses are going in on Johns Island, but the roads aren't going in. The 526 still isn't going in. So the real estate costs, the houses prices are going up, but they're not necessarily, obviously there'll be property taxes based on that and stuff, but the housing prices and what's going on, people are still moving to the island in droves. And part of this is every time I drive out to the island, I'll go and visit my family on the island. Every time I think, wait a minute, where did that neighborhood come from? Where, I'll look on this sign and say, now I came here 2 days ago and now there's 5 more houses built. First of all, I'm thinking, well, that's a real quick to build that house. But also, it's amazing how quickly these houses are going up. Now, Charleston has a housing crisis. People want to move to Charleston, and I can't blame them for that. But at the same time, we've got to be smart about where we're putting houses. Obviously, there's going to be all kind of issues with this because some of these houses, they're filling in different wetlands and such. They're cutting down trees, and then you're wondering why we have flooding problems. Trees naturally are going to soak up your water. So when you cut down trees, clear cut them, put in houses, you're going to have those kind of issues. But when it comes to cost of real estate versus 526, yes, there's a correlation, but at this point, the houses are going in, people are buying them like crazy. So I don't think that not having 526 is going to stop people from buying on Johns Island. The question is the county or the city going to put a moratorium on building on the island until the infrastructure can actually handle all of the people on the island? Because right now, the project, we're talking about 526. And 526, don't get me wrong, it's very important. But we haven't talked about the flyover at Highway 17. Because if you go from West Ashley and you go, and I'm sitting here off of Savannah Highway is where I live, everybody. I'm not going to tell you my address, but that being said, if I go out and I try to go to Johns Island right now, I'm going to sit in traffic for 30, 45 minutes just trying to turn on off of Savannah Highway onto Main Road. That's a big problem. We have to get the flyover. So when it comes down to 526, we need it. I'm not going to ever say we don't need it or we don't need some kind of solution for that. But right now, what we could do, we need to make sure we have the money and we need to hurry up and get and even fast track the flyover at 17 so that the traffic can be taken care of there. There's also talks about the forks off of the Stono River Bridge. So the Stono Bridge, you're supposed to have 2 forks. Well, from my latest time at the Johns Island Council meetings, it seems like not only one of the forks is going to happen, not both of them, and there's different reasons, and people are giving, the person who owns the land is trying to maybe say not to, or the county's doing this and that, and there's all kind of intrigue on it. But when it comes down to it, you've got to be able to get people on and off the island, and you've got to be able to have the roads to do that. So we need Highway 17 flyover so people can get to the Limehouse Bridge and get onto Johns Island and get off of Johns Island, because if you try to get off of Johns Island in the afternoon at the Limehouse Bridge, you'll be packed past Old Pond Road, down to Patton Avenue if traffic bad enough. So it's one of those things that we've got to do something now for the traffic. 526, $2 billion. And the reason I say some odd because wait a couple more months and it's going to go up again. So over $2 billion project, to get the funding for that it's funny to say it's going to take time when it's been 30 years, but when it comes down to it, that's going to take time. We don't have time for relief. We need to do something. We can't just wait.
So would you support that moratorium?
I would. I would support a moratorium of some. I mean, we have to do something, whether it's a moratorium or of some kind of at least slowdown. I don't know there's PUD planned right now, planned unit developments that are already planned, that are already in development. It's hard to stop those, but we've got to do something. We've got to stop. We've got to actually pay attention to the county's urban growth boundaries. We have to pay attention to the Johns Island. There's this whole plan for Johns Island that the county made in '99, passed in 2000. Right. But right now, it seems like that's just gone out the window. And part of that is the jurisdictions of City of Charleston not listening and this kind of stuff. So that our federal government and our governmental levels are great, but sometimes we need to make sure our government levels are listening to each other and working together, like county and the City of Charleston, making sure that Johns Island can handle the growth that is happening there.
Let me ask you, how many homes in District 119 have been built at a fairly consistent rate, particularly in that area, Johns Island?
You asked how many?
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure how many. I will tell you, when it comes to District 119 and the current map, the new map here of 119, I would say most of the new homes built in 119, the new homes, have been on Johns Island because of the area of West Ashley that covers 119 is mostly older neighborhoods. You have the water side of Savannah Highway, so most of those have been built out. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a couple of new small neighborhoods because in Charleston at this point, if you've got an acre, that's 4 houses that you can put on it. It seems like So I've seen there's one across the street there where it's a new neighborhood, but most of the houses, most of the area of 119 and West Ashley is established neighborhoods. But Johns Island, on the other hand, is actually a very small sliver of Johns Island that is included in 119. You have between Brownswood and Maybank highways, and then you have the water side of River Road. And of those, I can think of probably about 10 different developments that have been put up in the past 10 years, easily, if not more. So I would say probably I would argue probably in the thousands, at least in the thousands of new homes that are in the district on Johns Island.
I want to take you back to 1999, as you mentioned, because in the 1999 plan, a suburban rural area edge was established as a tool to delineate the rural area from the urban and suburban area, of course. Mm-hmm. Where is that edge right now in your district?
So, actually, it's funny. That edge, I'm fairly sure that edge is actually almost on my district line. So, because a lot of that goes with the city's zoning and stuff, and a lot of that is the things outside of the urban moratorium, so the urban growth district that are trying to keep urban growth from happening, goes down, and I'll say it this way: the City of Charleston, where they've incorporated Island, is down Maybank, is the City of Charleston, and then on River Road up to about the airport. After the airport, the easiest way, because we have to have a landmark to be able to say, because if I say, well, at this address, nobody's going to know what I'm talking about.
No.
But pretty much, by the time you get to the airport, that anything behind that is supposed to be in that no urban growth area. That being said, that's not necessarily happening. We have a lot of growth back on that part. Now, most of the growth that's happened on Johns Island has been within the city area. Like I said, has been between Brownswood and Maybank. So a lot of the new homes on Johns Island in the past 10 years are in District 119. A lot of the new developments that are happening right now are in the neighboring district, 116, are where a lot of the new homes are being built now, partly because a lot of the area in 119 is already built. I mean, there's only so much you can do. So a lot of those are now you're kind of moving back. The new neighborhoods are going to be, right by St. John's High School, a bit farther back on Main Road, going back towards Marianne Point. There's 2 new neighborhoods there. So that being said, those are not in District 119, but they continue to kind of just work their way back towards the Limehouse Bridge. Mm. We need to make sure we don't try to start pushing the boundary out towards Keywall Seabrook, because that's where the urban growth boundary is back in that area. And we need to make sure that we keep at least some part of Johns Island rural. Now, let's be honest, Johns Island's the second largest coastal island. The East Coast, obviously, big island. People don't realize how big it is, but Johns Island is no longer rural. Right. There is no keep Johns Island rural anymore, but we could still at least have smart growth on Johns Island and put a moratorium on new developments until we can get some of these roads projects done. That way, the way of life. The whole reason you want to move to Charleston, the whole reason you want to move to Johns Island is a way of life. That being said, if you're sitting in traffic for 45 minutes, that's not the way of life anybody's moving to Johns Island for. That's not why anybody's moving to Charleston.
And this might be a complicated question too, Mr. Fipps, but let me ask you, has the county and the city respectfully identified any high levels of infrastructure and services and medium to high intensity development existing within this particular area?
So has the county and city, I mean, don't get me wrong, they have ideas and they say stuff. It's one of those things. And now I'll go back to the forts. The forts have been years in process. It's one of those things, and I understand that government moves slow, and that's by design. We don't want government to move too fast, because when government moves too fast, it wastes money and it can be inefficient. But we also don't want government to move too slow. And that's what's happening with a lot of the projects on Johns Island. It comes down to it, Johns Island's been the redheaded stepchild of the county for a while. Johns Island's been forgotten. Johns Island has a tax base, especially when you take into account Kewah and Seabrook, which are not in 119, but when it comes down to it, if you want to get to Kewah, you want to get to Seabrook, you got two options. You can go through Johns Island or you can get on a boat. Those are your two options. So if you look at the tax money from Johns Island, Kewah, Seabrook, and you look at the amount that's spent there or how many projects are being done on Johns Island, and now there's lots in the works because so many people have moved out there and so many people have complained. But it's taken a long time. Now, I've seen the roads on Folly Road. I've seen Folly Road taken care of. I've seen plenty of roads on Mount Pleasant taken care of. But Johns Island is always forgotten. Johns Island is the forgotten part of Charleston County. And there's other parts of Charleston County forgotten too, don't get me wrong, but the growth, James Island has been pretty much grown. There's not much, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's land on James Island to find more, and if you're a developer, I'm sure you'll find that land on James Island, but it's pretty much James Island got full, so people started moving on to Johns Island and started building up on Johns Island. But the amount of infrastructure to match it, the county and the city really did not keep up with like they should have, in my opinion.
So what are the last figures of the population for District 119?
So all the state house districts have about a little bit over 40,000 people. And I believe the number is 42,000 people. And that's why it's really weird, we talk about gerrymandering, because obviously all the districts in the area and all the districts in the state and in the country are gerrymandered. That being said, you're trying to keep that 42,000 people mark. So you have to make some interesting lines. District 119 has definitely interesting lines in it. We have, like I said, we have part of West Ashley, but really West Ashley kind of loops up now. We've lost a part of West Ashley from 119, which would go pretty much from Savage Road on Savannah Highway, from Savage Road all the way down to almost to Avondale, has been taken out and put with Window Gilliard. So that area got put with Window Gilliard. And then Johns Island, actually, the map before redistricting, Johns Island went all the way to Edenville Road with District 119. Now District 119 is at Maybank. So that's a pretty big chunk taken away. So they've kind of redone the lines in a lot of ways. So it's really confusing, but there's about 42,000 people, give or take. There's a variance on that for every state house district. Is what you're looking at.
So what is more important for your district right now, Mr. Ken? Is it building new homes and commercial space, or rehabbing, expanding, and better utilizing the existing homes and spaces?
Yes. So it's one of those things, and I was talking about something else, but oftentimes we do A or B, but oftentimes the answer is A and B. So we need new homes in Charleston area. There's no bones about it. I mean, we have a housing crisis. I have friends that are realtors. I mean, and it's slowed down slightly because of the interest rate raise, but in Charleston, it's really not slowing down as much as it is in the rest of the country, because so many people are moving here to South Carolina and moving here to Charleston area specifically. So we need more houses in Charleston. I'm not going to say we don't, but we also need to take some of these houses and rehab them and do that. And so it's a both and. The thing is we need housing, but we also need the infrastructure. So if you keep on building the houses, the infrastructure is already crumbling. Like we can't do both. We have to figure out a way to get the infrastructure that we need now without adding another 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 homes, especially on Johns Island. There are other places in the county and other places in the greater Charleston area that could handle, with the infrastructure currently, could handle new homes better than Johns Island can currently handle the new homes. So I'm not saying no to new homes, but when it comes to District 119, West Ashley, the area of 119 that's in West Ashley, there's not many empty spaces. And let's be honest, and I've seen it in my own neighborhood, if there is an empty space, a developer will buy it and put 2 or 3 houses on it if they can. If they can fit them on there, if they can turn them whatever angle they can to get them on there, they will do so. And you laugh, you laugh because you've seen it. That's why you're laughing from experience. You're like, yeah, but I know exactly what we're talking about. They'll figure out that. So in West Ashley, there's not many room for homes. And in 119 on Johns Island, there's a little bit, don't get me wrong, but there's not as much as some other parts of Johns Island. But we have to say, hey, the infrastructure is just not here. We can't handle any more new homes for now in this part of the county. We need to move, and we need to, say, hey, for this amount of time until we can get these roads, a moratorium. I'm not saying a moratorium forever. Saying, hey, what's on Johns Island now, what's planned, we allow it, and for everything else, never again. No, but we do have to wait until we have those roads in a state, and the roads are never going to be enough. One of my problems, I was talking about 526, and we'll go back to 526. One of the big things is estimates from what I've seen say the day that it's open, as it's saying now, that $2 billion, that it already will be inadequate for the needs. Because it's one of those things of, even our interstates now are really inadequate. We're having to, expand. So it's one of those things that we have to make sure that we allow for growth in the county, but on Johns Island, we say, hey, we need to take a step back. We need to limit this, if not completely say no for now. It would be my thing.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Ken. This is a question I just thought about just a second ago.
Yeah.
But what current public and private partnerships would you be in favor for expanding infrastructure in your district?
So, as a good Republican, obviously, I'm always in favor of any good public-private partnership. At this point, I'm up for almost anything. It's one of those things that we've gotten to a point, and the people of Johns Island, and don't get me wrong, West Ashley, I sit in West Ashley traffic every day too. Yeah. So, and I'm talking a lot about Johns Island because it's very noticeable on Johns Island. West Ashley has it too. If you've ever go in about another 30 minutes, if you try to get down Magwood Road 61, which is part of my district. Sure. I was going there the other day, and literally to get from my home to there, which is just a couple miles, took me about 35 minutes. So it's one of those things that everywhere in Charleston, we need to do something with our roads. But for the private public partnerships, I don't know of any right now. I don't know of any right now. I'd be open to anything. And a lot of this, the unfortunate thing is there's only so much I can do as a state house rep. When it comes to the roads, there's a couple things that I can do to try to help for local areas. First of all, obviously, I can try to get the funding from the state and try to help with that. I think one of the things to be able to help fix our roads that we have now, I'm a big believer in local government. And the more local your government is, the more accountable your government is. Because when it comes to a state house rep or, the DOT, people usually don't have the availability to go to Columbia and complain to them. It's going to take a few hours to get up there and stuff. But if we were able to take and pass a law, and this is something I would be able to do, be able to say, hey, if a state highway, the state road does not cross county lines, we are going to go ahead and say we're going to give those back to the county. Any state highway that is not crossing county lines, we're going to allow county to take care of those roads, and because that's easy, and we're going to make sure that the funds that the state would use, we're going to put those back to the county. That, I think, is one of the ways that we get this actually, and that's something I could actually do. Part of this is, politicians love to promise the sun, moon, and the stars. But that's an actual thing we can do, is we can give the local governments control of the local roads because they're the ones who drive on it. They're the ones who actually understand what is needed. They can actually keep those roads where they're supposed to be. That way, when you have a problem, you can go right there to Bridgeview, go to county offices and say, hey, here's what's happening on this road. You can go there in an afternoon versus Columbia with SCDOT. So I think that's a big thing, is allowing local control of roads. And the other big thing across is, if you ever tried to get anything done to the road, it's a puzzle. Well, no, that's not a county road, that's a state road. And then you call the state and you say, well, no, that part that you're talking about, that is a county road. No, that's it. So it's so a confusing thing to allow roads that don't cross the county lines to be given back to the counties with the funds to be able to maintain those roads, I think is an actionable item as a state house rep that I could actually do. Because I don't want to just promise the moon and the stars and then say, well, sorry, I can't do that.
And they're giving me 3 minutes on Zoom because of this 40-minute limit. But let me ask you, what 10-year plan, Mr. Fipps, would you submit to the DOT to correct the backlog of maintenance and actually fix roads in District 119?
So for the DOT, what would I give them? I would pretty much, a lot of the things that are planned, I would say, hey, we need to bump those up on what we need for the 10-year plan. And so we need those forks. We need a way on and off of Johns Island, off of Stone Bridge. We need both forks, not just one. We need the flyover at 17. So a lot of things that are already there. I mean, the thing with 10-year plan is most of those are already planned. We just actually need to bump them up on the docket to make sure that we're doing those and getting them there. And also, I mean, there's some road widenings. There's Alt 6 is a big thing right now with widening and redoing all the way from Beach Ferry all the way down to Maybank when it comes to Main Road. So we need to work on all of those. We really do. We have to work on all of those. But it's one of those things of getting these stuff and actually listening to the public. Like Alt 6 was not an option, but the people said, here's what we need. They're the ones who drive it every day. They're the ones. So on Johns Island, Alt 6, when it comes to that corridor, would be an option. So it's just we've got to get more local control. That's what to sum it all up. What do I believe in? Give the control to the local governments. Let the state give the money that's there to the local governments and allow them to do what they need to get done. And that goes with both roads, but that also can be some of the educational processes. A lot of things just comes down to allow local communities to control their destiny.
Okay, I know I might be redundant in this question, but how would you create a permanent funding source for maintenance and road capacity?
So how would I do that? Part of that's already there. So a permanent funding source is obviously, as Republican taxes is the boogeyman. But when it comes down to it, we have to make sure. I think our gas tax is not being utilized like it should. First of all, I don't think we had the gas tax, but it's high. I think we should have put a moratorium on that for different stuff. But all that being said, you use that taxes. You use the money we have. We have a surplus in South Carolina. So the problem isn't the money issue when it comes down to it. We have a surplus. Maybe not a $2 billion, but we have a surplus. So the answer is putting the money aside and using it and making sure that we're having efficient use of the money. Let's be honest, anywhere that you look down a system, you have to look at efficiency. You have to look, okay, well, where is this money going? Follow the money and see where it's going. So it's not, I really wouldn't say it's an issue of funding as much as getting the funding there and making sure that it's being used correctly. I think that's the bigger issue that we have right now. And like I said, there's a surplus. We have money. How are we using it? That's the bigger question.
How much money from the gas taxes actually come back to District 119?
I do not know. So, and you ask really hard questions, and I really appreciate that because you are calling me on all my things I don't know. Because when it comes down to it, I come home from so I teach all day. I try to grade it as much as I can, and then I come home and I tell people what I'm about. And a lot of these things are great questions. And I'll be honest with you, my staff is me, myself, and I don't have somebody working in the office that the state pays. So a lot of these I don't know. I do know this. I do know that Charleston County is a donor county. And I know our time's probably getting close to it. So I'll say that Charleston County is a donor county. When it comes down to the tax money that we pay, that money goes to the state, and the money that we send versus the money we get back, we're a donor county. We're not getting everything back that we send, obviously. So we're a donor county. Not only that, I think we need to be using the accommodation taxes that we have. Because let's be honest, when people come to South Carolina, people love to go to Greenville. People love Myrtle Beach. People love Charleston. Well, we'll leave Columbia out of this. But that being said,
I like to go to downtown Columbia.
Downtown Columbia is not, and I pick on Columbia, obviously. But when it comes down to it, people are coming to South Carolina because of Charleston. We need to use those accommodation taxes to fix the roads in Charleston. That's where we can get some more money, is allowing those, because there's only certain things that's supposed to go to, allowing that to go to infrastructure in Charleston. Bringing that money back to Charleston, bringing the gas money back to Charleston. A big thing right now is we need to bring, and I'll say this, and the way to do that is having somebody at the table. We have a Republican majority in the State House. So as a Republican, I will have a seat at the table to represent 119. That's one of the things is we have to have a seat at the table.
Oh man, I wish I could talk to you more about this, and I wanted to talk to you more about teacher pay increase. But if you're elected, I would love to get you back on Quintin's Close-Ups. But for right now, Ken Fipps, thank you for your time, and welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much. I hope to be back after I'm elected.
I'll be here.